Shalom, shalom. We are talking about Parashat Toldot, um, the Torah portion for this week. Uh, the, it is from Genesis 25 verse 19 up to Genesis 28 verse 9. It's named Toldot or Toledot, meaning generations or family history. Associated with this Torah portion is a prophet portion from the prophet Malachi, chapter 1 verse 1 up to chapter 2 verse 7. And there's also two gospel portions, one from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 10 verse 21 to 38, and also from Paul's letter to the Romans chapter 9 verse 1 to 13. The gospel portions and the prophet portion both are subject to different videos that I've made. So in this, we'll look at the Torah portion. It's the 6th out of 54 portions. In last week's Parashat, we covered Sarah's death and how Isaac met Rebekah. In this week's Parashat, well, it's so jam-packed with fascinating information that in order to keep it in bite-sized, digestible chunks, I have to cut it into two videos, yet again. This week we learn about Jacob and Esau's early years. Jacob married Rebekah when he was 40 years old. When we consider the Pardes reading of the Peshat level, as it is written, we read the history of Jacob and Esau's early years. On the Ramesh level of reading with reflection, it's hinted that the Messiah will be born from the barren nation of Israel. And on the Darash level, we learn how to pray like Isaac and how our decisions influence our life's outcome. On the Sot level, there's so much in this parashat. We'll look at a couple of things. We'll investigate the hidden names of people, and especially Jacob's. Isaac ran into some old family frenemies as we opening the parashat. It is Abimelech, and like his father before him, Abram, who betrayed Sarah to Abimelech, so did Isaac. He betrayed Rebekah as his wife. And after this, I guess Abimelech must have had some really strong opinions about this family and their loyalty to their wives. Either way, Adonai confirmed his covenant with Isaac and blessed him, and you can read that blessing in Genesis 26 verse 23. The blessing was so obvious that the same frenemies, Abimelech and co., testified to it in Genesis 26 verse 28 to 29. It urged them to conclude a covenant towards peace with Isaac, which must have been the first Abrahamic accord in history. And this time it was over water and grazing. In Genesis 26 verse 28 to 29, they answered, that's their testimony about Isaac's faith. We saw clearly that the Lord was with you and how you are blessed by the Lord. In these verses, it's Abimelech, Ahuzahat, and Fichol testify to Isaac that they witness his walk with Adonai and that they recognize Adonai as the source of Isaac's many blessings. Isaac's life testified of a spirit-filled life. It is a repeat and a confirmation of Abimelech and Fichol's testimony of Abram's life a generation earlier, and you can read that in Genesis 21 verse 22. They testified that Adonai's former blessing of Abraham were now transferred onto Isaac. It begs the question, do you live your life in a way that will make your friends and your enemies testify about your faith, that they can see it in your life, that they can see Adonai's blessing on your life because of your faith. Such a daily walk cannot be done in your own strength. Through the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it becomes possible. I want to urge you, let Him take control and let us trust Him. Adonai blessed Abraham, He blessed Isaac, and He blessed Jacob, who was later named Israel. And He blessed them unto their 1000th generation. And you can read that for confirmation in Deuteronomy 7 verse 9. It is only by God's grace, through faith in Yeshua, that we as Gentiles are adopted or grafted into Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's family, the family of Israel. And therefore we too can enter into Adonai's blessing. But first, we read that Rebekah was barren, and that Adonai only opened her womb after 20 years of marriage, but only after Isaac interceded in prayer on her behalf. Just as we have learned a week ago from Eliezer's answered prayer in Genesis 24 verse 12 to 14, here we read once again that a prayer of intercession on behalf of another person is answered. There's yet another example I can immediately think of, and that is Moses' intercession on behalf of his sister Miriam to heal her from leprosy. And that is from the book of Numbers, chapter 12, verse 13. Not one of these biblical prayers are long-winded monologues. These prayers are short, they are to the point, and they are without pretense. The lesson for us is to adjust our prayers and our prayer life to pray in earnest for each other in order to be blessed. You can rest assured that Adonai will not ignore your appeals for the salvation of a wayward child or an unbelieving spouse or family member. He, Adonai, will definitely give them another chance. He is the God of second chances and 22nd chances and so on. He'll give them another chance to choose for as long as the window of opportunity is open to do so. But there is a caution, that window will not remain open forever. So often, the case in the Bible, prayers to relieve barrenness are answered with the birth of a very special son. I'm thinking of examples of Isaac, of Jacob, of Joseph, Samson, Samuel, and ultimately all these special sons and their seemingly delayed births point to Yeshua, the Son of God, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. In his history, Israel is the barren mother, and Yeshua is the long-awaited son, promised from the beginning, from when Adam fell into sin. Once pregnant, Rebekah had a very difficult pregnancy, and then she gave birth to the terrible twins that this parashat is about. They differed from each other as night differed from day. So in order to make this parashat digestible, I'll talk about Esau's descendants and then go on to talk about the brothers in the second of two videos. I want to say that I'm not reading the scriptures here. It will take too much time, but I want to encourage you, please read it with attention to detail. It will definitely enrich your life. Back to Esau's wives. Esau's wives were disruptive to the entire family. There is some confusion regarding their names that stems from differences in Genesis 26 when compared to Genesis 36. So I will attempt to make some sense of it. Esau's first wife was Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, but she was also known as Basemat. Her name Adah is linked to jewelry and perfume from or in order to attract harlotry, prostitution. Adah born a son named Eliphaz for Esau. Through Eliphaz, Esau's grandchildren became the nation of Edom. Eliphaz then married Timnah, the daughter of Seir the Horite, and you can read that in Genesis 36, verse 20 to 22. Her brother Lotan was one of Esau's chiefs. Timnah was a princess of Seir, but much desired to become part of Abram's family, so much so that she said it was better to be a handmaiden in Abram's household or in Isaac's household than to be a noblewoman of Seir. Her intention, in fact, was to seduce and marry Jacob. But after she's been rejected by the house of Abram and Isaac's house, she then married Eliphaz, Esau's son. And like they say, hell has no fury like a woman scorned in love. Timnah with Eliphaz gave birth to a son named Amalek. From Amalek came Agag. And you'll remember the king who Adonai said through the prophet Samuel that King Saul must kill him, and Saul spared his life. This same Agag, in the night that his life was spared by Saul, fathered offspring that eventually produced Haman the Agagite, the hater of the Jews from the book of Esther. And centuries later, from Agag's line and Amalek's line also came Adolf Hitler. The rejection of Esau as a son of the promise of the covenant found its equal in the rejection of Timnah as a wife for Jacob. It bred hatred against the descendants of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, the children of Israel, that lasted from generation to generation. But there's more to Timnah. From the first book of Chronicles, chapter 1, verse 36, it is deducted that Esau's grandson Eliphaz had an extramarital affair with the wife of Seir the Horite. Timnah was born from that affair, and that is the reason why she was rejected in the household of Abram by Isaac and by Jacob. Her infatuation with Jacob, or Israel as he was known later, probably was the reason why Rebecca said that she would rather die than have her favorite son Jacob marry into this genetic maelstrom that Timnah represented. However, Timnah then married her own biological father Eliphaz and gave life to Amalek, the eternal enemy of Israel. Esau's second wife was Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite. She was also known as Oholibamah and also probably known as Basemat as well. Her name, Oholibamah, links her to idolatry, quite possibly as a temple prostitute. She was the daughter of Anna, Beri's wife, who was a daughter of Zion the Hivite. When Esau realized how much his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, were repulsed by his Hittite wives, he also married a third wife, Mahalat. She was the daughter of Ishmael, and he did so in an order as an attempt to appease them. There are different opinions amongst the Jewish sages regarding whether or not Mahalat was a good influence on Esau, or whether she sealed his face to be hated by Adonai. I will not dare my own opinion. Mahalat may also have been known as Basemat, the same name that was given to his first and his second wives as well. I guess it would be convenient if you have 3 wives to have one name for all 3. But Basemat probably have been a title rather than anybody's name. Basemat means to burn incense to false gods or to demons. As I close this first one of 2 videos on Parashat Toldot, I would like to sprinkle just a little bit of sod or hidden meaning into it as well. The Parashat name Toldot means generations or family history, as mentioned before. And that is, or in the case of the Toldot of Noah, Abraham and Jacob, Toldot is spelled Tav Vav Lamed Dalet Tav, with a Nakut dot above and between the Dalet and the last Tav. The Nakut also brings the sound of the missing second Vav in the word. In the case of Esau's Toldot, that's given in Genesis 36, a passage we will read in the future, but the Vav and the Nakut in spelling Toldot is swapped around when it comes to Esau's family history. And this indicates, the sages say, that Esau was a man of reduced standing because of his poor choices and bad decisions that he's made in his life. It refers specifically with how he viewed his birthright and how he traded it for some lentil soup, but it also refers to his choice of wives. His reduced standing with reference to the covenant is in fact written into his Toldot, into his generations. And that finally concludes the first video of the 2 videos on Parashat Toldot. I hope that it stimulated you to also watch the second video. In this parashat, we've looked at everything around the 2 sons that was born to Isaac and Rebekah. In the next video, we'll only talk about those 2 boys. Shalom.